friend.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you? It's nice to see you. It's been so long.
I know it's been a while, like
Yeah,
literally a month.
yeah. It feels so, it's nice to see you again, even though, like, we've never actually met in person, which is so crazy, but, like, it's cool to have friends, period. So,
Well, you're totally sweet, and it's so nice to be able to like video chat with you and do this.
yes, I'm so, so excited. I'm also, like, a little bit nervous because this is my first time doing anything like this, but I'm glad you're willing to be my guinea pig and just, like, pretend that I know what I'm doing.
Well, I mean, there's a first for everything, right?
Yeah, yeah. And this is like a super important thing that I'm so glad we're able to talk about. And I think this is going to be really helpful to a lot of people.
Me
I
too.
know it's something I wish I had when I was younger and figuring all this stuff out. I say younger, like I'm 18, I'm not that old. I feel old. 2020 has made us all old.
I totally agree with you, and I get it. Like I feel like this would have been so helpful when I was younger, and even just like when I was starting.
Yeah, especially since just like in general, mental health is such a taboo topic. Like no one talks about it. Like it's just becoming a thing that people are starting to realize, oh, this is a real thing. It's not just you being lazy or complaining or just acting crazy or whatever. It's like this is a real problem.
Yeah, 100%.
I know. Like we'll get more into this later, but like that was something that was really hard for me is like my dad in particular, he was like not really realizing how serious my mental health problems were. I don't think any of us really realized until I ended up in the hospital. But now, obviously, since that happened, he's been coming more around and he's generally been a lot more accepting of like when I say, it's like, this is a real problem. Like, I really can't do this. So it's like, so that's always good.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Very important.
So let's get started. I just want to say, I love like your hair. It's like awesome. I'm like,
Oh, thank you.
yes. I don't know if it's still, it was red like over the summer, right?
hmm
Yeah.
It's just like the ends are red still,
I
but
love that though. That's like one of my favorite things when someone dyes their hair and then like the ends just stay cool for a while.
well, thank you.
Yes. You look gorgeous. It's great.
Thank you. You're so sweet.
Oh, you're so nice. Like, I want you guys to know Piper is so nice. Like, we were randomly, we all met. Piper is one of the friends I met at our emotions supper intensive over the summer. And we had video rehearsals, and one of the rehearsals just ended up being dancer talk time, and we just had some serious conversations. And at that conversation, at some point, mental health came up, and Piper privately, she texted me, she was like, yo, girl, you need anything, I got you. So we love
Yeah.
Piper, and Piper's awesome. So.
Well, we love Jillian. Jillian's amazing.
Okay, so welcome everyone to this first episode of Real Talk, Real Dancers. I'm excited for Piper to be my first guest. So if you hadn't already guessed, today's episode is on mental health and dancers. So let's just get started with some introductions, get to know you. So we all know your name is Piper, obviously. But just so how did you get into dance? When did you start dancing?
So, well, I'm 18. I turned 19 this Sunday, actually.
Yay! Happy early birthday!
Thank you. But I've been dancing for almost 17 years. I started dancing, well, I was always dancing around my house when I was really little, according to my mom and my family. And so I started dance when I was 3. My grandparents, my great grandparents and my parents put me in like an all sort of dance
Mm-hmm.
class. And so there was like tap and jazz and some ballet. And I really loved it. And then I wanted to start doing just ballet
Mm-hmm.
when I was 6. So I started doing both. I did both until I was about 9 or 10. And then I had to choose between because it was really hard for us to afford both. And my great grandparents couldn't financially help us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I picked ballet, and I stuck with that for like 12 years. And um, it's dance is everything to me. And so that's really how I got into it. And my mom always had music on everywhere we went, all different types of music all the time. And I really wanted to do Celtic dance when I was
Ooh, yeah.
because my mom used to turn on river dance. And so I was so interested in that, and just like I always felt the music and
Hmm.
just moved my body, and so that's how I started dance.
That's so cool. So where are you dancing now, and what are your dance plans for like the next year or so? I know COVID has like ruined everyone's plans for everything, but
So I dance with the Cache Valley School of Ballet here in Cache Valley, Utah. It's just like an hour and a half north of Salt Lake City in Valley West, and they're like headquarters.
hmm.
Um, and so I actually am starting in the highest level through the school there this year.
Yay!
And so I'm very excited to be able to have this goal that I've met through this progression through the school. And I am hoping to join the local company this year through the Cache Valley Civic Ballet and do performances with them. And I want to continue doing some more summer programs and auditioning for more programs, and hopefully audition for Ballet West again this year.
Well, that sounds so exciting. I'm so happy for you, and I'm sure so many good things are on the way for you. Like, you're such a beautiful dancer. Like, when I'm not dancing or whatever, I'm just like watching you off in like the tiny box of my screen. I'm like, hey, this is great.
Oh, you're so sweet. That's what I did for you.
No, not great.
No, it's totally true. You're talented and gorgeous.
I need more friends like you. Seriously.
Well, I'm here.
Yes, we
Might
appreciate you.
to be there, but I'm here.
And that's what people need, is people who are there. And we're going to get more into that later too. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit and start getting into the mental health part of this English, the mental health portion of this discussion.
Mhm.
So let's go back to the beginning. When did you first start to notice that maybe something wasn't quite right and that you might be experiencing some mental health issues?
So it really started when I was in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was being bullied really bad throughout school, and I'd had to switch school already once in first grade, and so I was already a little bit behind, and I got teased because of that, and several other different reasons that I was teased for. But I um, was struggling with school and making friends and keeping friends and learning social cues and things like that. And I was struggling focusing in school. And I was probably 10 when my great grandma that I was really close to passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And that started a spiral for me. And things just continued to get worse. And I ended up being bullied by one of my teachers consistently.
Oh
Also.
no, that's
So,
always really hard.
yeah, and it made things really hard. And I felt like I was just at a loss because I didn't know what was going on or why I was upset all the time. What had been going on? Why I didn't have friends. Um, and so, like, it really started back in about fourth grade, third or fourth grade. And then throughout middle school, fifth grade, I dropped out of school and I did homeschool for the rest of fifth grade. And then I started at a new charter school when I was in sixth grade. And I was a brand new kid. I was shiny and new at first. And everybody wanted to be my friend. And then they started to get to know me and they stopped wanting to be my friend. And so I went through several different groups of people and people throughout my sixth grade year. And the summer before my 7th grade year was when it was at its worst, and I
Mhm.
ended up in the hospital and had to be treated for an attempt.
Yeah, and that's like, that was pretty early. That's something I think a lot of people don't realize is that these things don't just magically appear when you get older. Like, by the time you're that far gone that you're thinking about like wanting to harm yourself or maybe ending your life, like this has been going on for a while now. Like,
Mhm.
I know for me, like, it wasn't exactly mental health, but there was something weird going on. Like, when I was 7, I would fake fainting spells just because I felt so lonely and I wanted someone to pay attention to me. Like, I'm the middle child, so I guess I always felt like my brother was the baby, so he gets all the attention, and my sister was the oldest, so my parents had to worry about her. So I think the drama part of me has always been like in there somewhere. It's like, well, I'm gonna be the actress that I know I am inside, and I'm gonna like do this, and you're gonna pay attention to me. Actually, ended up being in the hospital for like 3 days while they ran every test in the book. It's like, there's nothing wrong with her, so I think you should just go home. It's like, well, that's over now. So what do I do now? And then it was just like another couple years of feeling like kind of lost and just alone because I didn't really have any friends because I'm homeschooled, so like I didn't automatically have the school. And then all the kids from the Christian school at my church, like they didn't really like me all that much, so I couldn't hang out with them. And I mean, I love my dance friends, but I was like one of a few black kids, so there was like never anyone I really felt was like, oh, like we could be lifelong friends. I mean, obviously now I have a couple of really good friends, and I mean, still in my dance school, I'm like the only black girl there. But I think
But
that definitely contributed to the feeling of aloneness. It's like, oh, I don't have anyone else I can really look at and be like, oh, that's something I can aspire to, or
yeah,
someone who I want to be more like. So I think
totally.
that was a lot of my problem. And like you said, just the general feeling aloneness of it all. You're like, well, there's no one here who really cares about me, so there's no one who's going to miss me when I'm gone.
Yeah. And like there's a point where there's nothing like physically medically wrong with you on the outside or that they can see, and so you're like, oh, I'm making this up, like
Hmm.
it's just me. And so that's like a big thing I feel like with internalizing mental health and um, mental disorders and things like that, because you can't ever really see them,
Right.
and so therefore they're not real, maybe they're really not there.
And that's one of the especially hard things is that when you're in the midst of that depression or whatever may be going on, you are not capable of expressing to someone how it is that you're feeling because you're just so far inside of it. It's like, I know I don't feel okay, but I don't know how to express to you what's going on. So you either just think I'm moody and I don't want to talk to you, or that I'm just acting out because I feel like it, or something like that.
Yeah, and you end up feeling very selfish when you do try to talk
Hmm.
about it, because it's all about my problems and I'm feeling this way and feeling so terrible. But what if they're feeling that bad as well? And that goes along with the whole like anxiety part of everything also.
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of disorders have that underlying anxiety as well, even if you may not have been diagnosed with straight up anxiety.
Yeah, because I know when I was little, like I said, I was the middle kid, so I wasn't like the most important child. And then my grandmother also, she lives with us, so we've been taking care of her for years. And I always felt like, well, I don't need to bother anyone with my problems because they have enough going on. So I'm just gonna hide inside the little hole I create inside of myself and like hang out with my made up people in my brain because at least I know they're never gonna leave me. Which I mean, I'm not schizophrenic, but it's like they're
You
my friends, so
get
we're
it.
gonna hang out together.
Mm-hmm. You feel safer alone in a sense than with other
Hmm.
people, because you know your head the best and you can't ever rely on what someone else is going to do or be like in
Yeah.
response to you.
Hmm. So it's just this weird like circular thinking is like no one cares, so I'm gonna hang out with myself, which leads to people thinking like you're moody, they don't want me to talk to them, so they leave you alone, and then you just end up more alone, and then it's just this horrible cycle of emptiness that is what usually leads to like hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
So you said you hit your rock bottom when you were 12, right before 7th grade.
Mm-hmm. Um, it. So I feel like that was the absolute worst point for me, that I felt the need to attempt, because I couldn't talk to anyone. I didn't think my parents would understand, because we never talked about mental health or anything really. Because I was just bullied, but I was a good kid. Like, I misbehaved a lot, but I was like okay in a sense. Like, there was nothing really wrong with me. But throughout high school until about my junior year, I struggled really bad, and there were points where I had almost hit rock bottom again. But I've gone through everything alone and by myself. And so I learned how to pull myself out of it to a point. And there were nights where I couldn't be alone. Like, I made myself go sit upstairs even if my parents were asleep.
Yeah.
I had to pull myself out of it, because if you don't have anyone else, at the end of the day, all you have is yourself, and you have to be your best self for you.
Yeah, you have to, I mean, it's so easy to say, but it's so hard to get to that place where you are able to just, okay, I know this is not good, and I know that because I've been here before, I know what it took to get me back the last time, and I can do that for myself. But like you said, you just being with your parents, even like just because you know you couldn't be by yourself, that takes so much strength. I remember for me, that was like a huge thing. It's like my worst point started, I guess, the beginning of high school. In it was either my 8th grade or my 9th grade spring, I got mono. So I missed 2 months of dance and school. So I had to work super hard to get back to where I had been the previous year. So then the spring of the next year, I got it again. So that was another 2 months, which is like not supposed to happen. You're only supposed to be able to get it once. So when I got it, like the doctors were like, I really don't know what's wrong with you. Like, you're not anemic. Your vitamin D is fine. I don't know why you're so tired. I ended up in the hospital, and they were like, you might have tuberculosis. And they like quarantined me off in this room until they had the test get back. It's like, oh no, it's just mono again. And I was like, but they told me it was just the once. So that was like basically 2 years I couldn't get back, because the time before that had been spent trying to catch up. So it's not like I was somewhere else. So I missed 2 years of school and dance. So my junior year was where I hit rock bottom, because I was trying to get back all that schoolwork, 2 years of schoolwork. I was trying to condense into basically a semester, because I wanted to be able to graduate on time. And I was still in the middle of dance. The style of dance I take, we do exams when you reach a certain point, and they had already rescheduled this exam twice because I was sick. And I don't think my teacher was really taking seriously that, like, hey, I was sick and it's going to take me a minute before I'm ready to do this. And like, there had been one point earlier in the year where she had gone ahead and scheduled the exam, even though I was like, I'm not ready for this. She went ahead and scheduled it. She's like, yeah, you're taking this exam in a month. And I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And my mom actually had to call her and tell her, hey, this is not okay. Like, she cannot do this right now. She's like, okay, fine. She backed off. But then about 6 months later, it was November, December, well, actually, like September, the beginning of the school year, once everything started back up again. By this point, I haven't had a summer break in like 3 years. So,
That's really hard, not having a break.
yeah, it was just way too much, just grinding and grinding and grinding. And the 2 months I did have as a break didn't feel like a break, because I was miserable. So, like, I've been going so hard and nonstop. So we start the school year. That was my first year auditioning for things. So you have that added pressure. I auditioned for Ballet West Nutcracker. They toured to DC. I got in. So that was fun. I had that to look forward to. And that's probably the only reason I made it as far as I did. my exam was the first week in December of 2018. Nutcracker was also that week. In November, that Thanksgiving, my cousin is a social worker, and my mom told her, is like, hey, weird things have been going on. Like 2 weeks before that, November the 16th, that was the first time I ever tried to harm myself. I had been supposed to have like a birthday celebration at my studio, but it snowed, so it got canceled, and I was so disappointed. It's like, oh, now I'm by myself again. I feel horrible. I'm gonna take it out on my body because I don't feel good, and so I don't deserve to feel good either.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks after that, at Thanksgiving, my mom like talked to my cousin, like, she's not okay. She won't tell me what's wrong. Maybe she'll tell you what's wrong. Go talk to her. So I talked with my cousin, and she found out there was a hospital near us that had a daytime mental health program, so I wouldn't have to miss Nutcracker or anything. And she like called them up, and I went there. I got evaluated. They put me in the program. So I had that during the day, and then I had Nutcracker at night. So I do not live near DC. So I was driving an hour and a half in the middle of the night, basically, because Nutcracker ends at like 11:30. It's a long ballet. So I'd get home at like midnight, 12:30. I'd have to get up at 6:30 to be in the hospital in time for the day program. So I wasn't getting sleep. I was already depressed. I was super anxious. I had this exam to worry about. And at this point, Nutcracker was like the one thing keeping me like sane. I mean, I wasn't sane, but like keeping me going through the day. So Nutcracker finishes, I think, either the 9th or the 10th. Then that Monday, it snows again, so I don't go to the hospital. And I spend like that whole night just crying. And I don't go to sleep. I'm just sitting downstairs on the couch, pretending to watch TV, but like so out of it, I'm not even paying attention. My mom comes downstairs and she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, at this point, I've been to a psychiatrist for like 2 years at this point. I was misdiagnosed, so I was like, the medication wasn't doing anything, but I was on Neurontin. And I told my mom, like, I'm thinking of ODing. Like, I want to just take that whole giant bottle and take as many, because I was on a really high dose. And if you OD on Neurontin, like, this is what is like super powerful. I was like, I'm down here because I have the bottle in my room, and I know that if I go in there, something might happen. So the next day, the hospital's open again, and every day they ask you when you get there or right before you leave, it's like, do you feel safe? If you go home, is something going to happen? And that was the first day I was like, no, I don't feel safe, and I'm pretty sure that if I go home, I'm going to try and do something. So they didn't let me go home that night, and I ended up being inpatient for about a week. And after that night, they told me, it's like, we wanted to have you inpatient from the beginning, but we were trying to be nice and let you finish Nutcracker. But from day one, we thought you were serious enough to be inpatient. And I mean, that was really hard because, like, I mean, at that point, I was so burned out and depressed. I didn't care about dance anymore. Like, it was Nutcracker, and then everything else can go in a hole. I don't care. Like, I did so bad in that exam. I had a mental breakdown in the exams. Like, I got through turns, and I just started crying, and the examiners were like, are you okay? And I was like, no, but I'm gonna finish this because I need to get this over with and done. And like, I failed so many sections of that. I honestly don't know how I passed. I think that was God being nice to me. It's like, you should do this again. This is hard enough the first time. But
I'm sure that it showed you had more potential than
maybe.
you had felt that you had. And then they could see that, because that's something that I struggled with recognizing, is because maybe like I'm not terrible or as bad as I think I am, or maybe I am bad, but they can see that I'm working hard.
Yeah.
I'm trying. I feel like that's something that might have been a factor. And like, even though, especially if you had a breakdown and then you finished it, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
It shows a lot of strength.
Something inside of me was like, if we don't finish this, who knows when it could be done? And you went through all this stress. We might as well just get this over with now. And that was like, I think that was the last time I danced until like maybe January. because I was just like, I'm over it. I know, I'm done. I don't want to go. It's like I disappeared for a week and my teacher didn't say anything. It's like I just didn't show up to class because I was in the hospital and I couldn't tell anyone I wasn't coming to class because I was in the hospital. It was just like I just wasn't there. And then the day I got out was like, I think being in the hospital was like, my counselor said, it's like from the first day I showed up as an outpatient to like the third or fourth day of inpatient, like she saw such a change. Like I had come in and she's like, you didn't look horrible, but like you did not look okay. But now you're so happy, like you're smiling, you're singing, because we'll get to that later, but singing was like one of the other things keeping me sane.
Mhm.
But she's like, yeah, you seem so much better. And then like the day after I got out of the hospital, one of my friends from dance, she was like, are you okay? It's been a week and I haven't seen you or heard from you. I just want to make sure everything's all right. I was like, I do have friends who like me. So that was the beginning of finally getting out of this horrible hole that I was in. So,
Good.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, like, because I went through everything alone, I've gone through most things and dealt with most things by myself. I have some really great friends now and some really great people in my life and now, but I started to self-harm in sixth grade, I believe, was when I really started. And it's been a constant battle since. There have been lots of relapses from multiple different types of self-harm. And I have struggled with an eating disorder since about fourth grade. And it got better throughout me figuring things out for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started treatment, it wasn't right, and I wasn't seeing therapists that I liked, and I was released from the inpatient program after my attempt after only 10 days, and I definitely wasn't better at that point. And I was on medication that wasn't really helping, and it helped a little bit at first, and then it stopped working. And then I tried different medications and different medications and different medications, and nothing was working. And then I found one therapist when I was a sophomore, and I was doing online school throughout the end of 8th grade until about halfway through my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been alone, and my parents found this therapist here because the other one refused to see me.
Wow.
I'd been seeing refused to see me because I was so mentally ill at this point. And definitely right before 7th grade and my sophomore year were like my lowest points in my life. And I'm diagnosed with manic depression. I have anxiety, ADHD. I have some OCD, and I have an impulse disorder and an eating disorder. I was diagnosed with anorexia when I was 13. But I started seeing one therapist, and she had a therapy dog, and we sat on the floor and we colored while we talked. And I'm a very physical person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have tons of art around my room. I just painted my new room wall. Like, I have to be doing something, and it helps with the ADHD as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was before I was on medication for my ADHD. But I was able to open up about some things, but I still was so shut off from being so alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were unable to pay for therapy for a while. And so I started, like, my pediatrician started sort of being my therapist, and it was just basically medications and things like that that he managed based on whether I had said if I was depressed or not. And there was one point where my mom had threatened to take me to the hospital because she caught me self-harming. And I was, it was about halfway through my sophomore year, just after I'd started at the public high school here. And so she drove me an hour to this hospital when they said they couldn't do anything after running my vitals and everything. And I had been bawling in the car the whole way there because she dragged me out of the house and put me in the car and said, "I'm driving you here." And she'd threatened it like a couple times before if it was really bad, if she'd seen something. Or if I'd had an episode where I'd been really depressed and I had skipped dance, or like I started skipping dance all the time because I just had no energy and I couldn't handle it, and I felt like I wasn't going anywhere and no one liked me. And if I'd skipped dance and she knew about it, then it was a threat. Are you getting worse? What's going on? And so she drove me, and they didn't help me, but they recognized that I had been self-harming. And so they gave my mom a different list of therapists that were on our insurance. So I started therapy with someone else. And then I stopped being able to go because of my school schedule. Couldn't miss school in the middle of the day for their appointments, and that's the only time that they had open. And so I started going to the school counselor. And the counselor I had when I started there, his name was Alex, and he was great. He was like the baseball coach and the school counselor for a third of the school, and he was great. And so that definitely helped a lot. And then I was struggling focusing in school still. And so my pediatrician recommended trying like a low dose of Adderall, and that immediately helped when I started taking it.
That's always good when you can find someone who's like, we're going to switch this stuff because this is not, you need more assistance.
Mm-hmm. He was like, okay, well, nothing else is working. Maybe we should try this. And then immediately it helped.
Yeah. The right medication does so much.
Mm-hmm. Medication is very important for it to be correct for you. And it does take a lot of trial and error sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
And like your bodies change, your brains change, especially growing up as well. And like chemicals in your brains change.
Right. And that's what depression is. It's like a chemical imbalance in your brain. A lot of people think it's just like, oh, you're sad. So it's like, no, there's literally something wrong in there. It's like, it's not necessarily something I can control entirely just by sheer willpower. It's like, I don't want to be sad anymore. So I am not sad. Like, that's not exactly how it works.
I'm putting my foot down.
Yes, it's like, I've decided to be happy. Sometimes if it's not that bad, that can do a lot to like help you get over that hump. But after a certain point, it's like, you do actually need some more help. And on that subject, let's talk a little bit about finding the right therapist and the right psychiatrist. Because I know for me, that was also like, that took way longer than it probably should have. Like I said, like since like the end of middle school, I'd been having like, I wasn't really that great. It's like when you go to the pediatrician, like they give you that survey, like questionnaire. It's like, have you thought about trying to kill yourself in the last 2 weeks? Are you sad all the time? Do you get up on time? Do you feel the need to take excessive naps? And they were getting more and more towards that depression side. And my mom brought it up with my doctor. She's like, hey, are there any psychiatrists or therapists around here? I was like, I can't find any. And she's like, okay, I'll give you this list. So I started seeing the psychiatrists and therapists all in one. They were like an hour away from my house. So you drive an hour for a 45-minute appointment and then an hour to get home. So that's a lot of time out of my day. I am still in school at this point.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was a nice lady, but as a therapist, I wasn't really doing, it was mostly, that's why for me, I haven't stayed in therapy. Like, I'm still on medication, I'm still seeing a psychiatrist, but I'm not currently in therapy because therapy has never really done much for me. It's always mostly been the therapist just talking at me, telling me things, and I'm like either not responsive because I don't feel good, or I just like, why am I here? I don't have anything to tell you right now. So what's the point of the session?
Exactly.
So it had been like, was it a year? It might have been about a year that I'd been seeing the therapist and then the psychiatrist there. The psychiatrist there had me on the Neurontin gabapentin. I started at the normal dose and then I kept making it higher and higher and higher as literally nothing was happening. He's like, it's fine. It's got a big, like, wide range of things you can prescribe. It's like, you're at 2,400, but we can keep going up if we need to. So you'll be okay. They're like, we've got plenty of room. It's like, it's been a year and literally no change is happening because of this medication. So maybe it's time to switch? Maybe? No? Okay, cool. So literally, we stopped seeing them, A, because it was so far away, and B, because, like, clearly this isn't working, but you don't want to change this because, so I was misdiagnosed for a while. He said I had bipolar 1, which for anyone who doesn't know, bipolar is the more extreme of the bipolars, where you're usually more, like, your mania and depression episodes are more extreme. So if you are bipolar 1 and you get manic, you might go out and drive your car at 90 miles an hour, or buy $3,000 worth of clothes at the store, or just go out and have like 700 one-night stands for no good reason. And when you're depressed, you're like really on the suicidal end of things. So he said I had bipolar 1, which I did not, because at this point I'd never been suicidal, and my mania episodes were never that extreme. But he said I had bipolar 1. He gave me Neurontin, which did nothing for a year, and then I just kept going down and down and down until I ended up in the hospital, where at that point I wasn't exhibiting any mania signs. So the doctor at the hospital was like, I don't think you're bipolar, I think you just have depression, and she switched me to Lexapro, which worked much better than the Neurontin, which did nothing. Because Neurontin, because he thought I had bipolar 1, Neurontin is supposed to be a balancer, so it just keeps you in a middle gray zone. It doesn't make you less depressed or less manic. It's just supposed to balance everything out. So as someone who was just extremely depressed, it did nothing because I needed help to get out of that hole, which, yes. Yes, it's like I wasn't having any up problems at the moment, so we didn't need to try to moderate that, but that's what we did, and it didn't work. So then she switched me to I was on a really small dose of Lexapro when I left the hospital, and everything was going great. Before I left the hospital, they were really nice. They like to make sure that you have an appointment with a psychiatrist and an appointment with a therapist before they will let you leave. And that was super important and crucial. So I had the new psychiatrist. I only saw her for about 3 months before my mom was like, I think you need a new psychiatrist. And I was like, okay, yeah, I do need a new psychiatrist, because there was a bunch of weird things. I think there was a bunch of miscommunication happening there. The office wasn't very well managed. And then also, I don't know if me and her were really on the same wavelength. I'm not sure if she understood like the things I was saying. So then I switched psychiatrist again to the psychiatrist I'm currently seeing, and I love her. She's amazing. She is so understanding. She increased my medication again, and then, because even after I started seeing the psychiatrist before, the one I'm seeing now, I was still getting more depressed. So that was never good. At that point, I was still seeing a therapist, and again, therapy didn't really do anything for me. I just be sitting in the chair either crying because I was depressed, or just like giving 2-3 word answers because like I don't care, and also I'm depressed. So, and then when I'm feeling good, therapy doesn't do anything for me because I'm like, why am I talking to you? I feel fine. I have nothing to tell you is wrong. And then usually when I'm depressed, it's not for any reason. Like, I just feel awful. It's like, so why do you think you're depressed? Like, I don't know. I just feel bad. Can you leave me alone? I just want to go cry in a corner somewhere. So, yeah, I stopped seeing a therapist, I think, last year, and I've been doing fine. So therapy isn't for everyone, but definitely you should start out and see if it is going to work for you, because you don't want to be in the situation where you find out, like, way too far down the road, oh, if I had been talking to someone about what I was feeling earlier, then none of these horrible things ever would have happened to me. For me,
Yeah.
my therapy usually comes in the form of my best friends. Like if something's going on, I feel like I can talk to them about it, just like a casual one-off. It's like, hey, I'm kind of feeling this. I don't know if it's just me or like if I'm just getting in my head. And they'll be like, hey, if I am in my head, they'll help me get out of my head. And if it is something, it's like, yeah, I totally see where you're coming from. They can just like help me talk through it, and then I feel better, and I don't have to pay them $150 a visit. That's another important thing, is finding the right therapist for you who is also covered by your insurance. That's an important thing. That's the other thing. My first doctor and therapist, they were not in our insurance. So that was a poor decision to see them for a year, drive 3 hours, and then also that. Yeah, that was stupid. I don't know why we did that. I needed help. That's why we did it. But unfortunately, that wasn't very useful help. So.
Well, and you learn as you go, and everyone is different, and things may work for a while, whether it's medications or your life routines or therapy or psychiatry or whatever. And you grow and change as a person, and whether like that means that you grow through people or through things or just through yourself, like you have to find what works for you.
Especially since not only do you grow and change, but the mental issue can also change. Like I said, when I was in the hospital, I was just depressed. But as I progressed more and more, it's like she took down the Lexapro and put me on Lamictal, which is another, like Neurontin is a stabilizer. So I was on just Lamictal for a couple months, I think. And then this past fall, I started having mania episodes, but again, not extreme mania, just like casual for a couple days. I wouldn't sleep, or I would just talk really loud and really fast for like literally no reason, or I'd just be like kind of crazy and all over the place. And it was again September, I auditioned for Nutcracker with Atlanta Ballet, and I remember I stayed up all night the night of the audition. Like, I did not go to sleep that entire night. I went to the audition. I didn't go to sleep till like 2 the next morning, and we had rehearsal the next day. And I like still hadn't slept. I just went that whole weekend without sleeping. And then, but not only was I not sleeping, I was also like so miserable. Like, I would cry at the drop of a hat. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't actually want to go to rehearsal. Like, I should have been excited about the fact that I'd just gotten into another production at the Kennedy Center, but I like couldn't care less. Yeah. Like a couple hours before the audition, like I thought not getting it would be the end of the world. But then once I got it, it was like, oh, well, I mean, it happened and I still don't feel good. So I was depressed, but then I was also exhibiting symptoms of mania. But my mom calls my psychiatrist and he's like, there's something going on because she's switching between mania and depression so fast. So that was when I got my current diagnosis of a specific type of bipolar 2, where you can either cycle between depression and mania super fast, or you exhibit symptoms of both at the same time. So right now, I'm on Lexapro and Lamictal because I'm still depressed more than I am manic. So I have the Lexapro to keep me from getting down to that bottom, and then I have the Lamictal to keep me from those crazy mania episodes, because that's not good for life. So, but it took me till about January, February of this year to finally get the medication figured out enough to reach that point where I was okay.
Yeah. And medication was something that I struggled with. I am currently not taking any anti-anxiety or antidepressants because the ones that I was taking, and I took them for a few years, they started making me physically ill. Like I was nauseous every morning, and I wasn't sleeping, and I was like, every time I took them, I just felt so sick, and they didn't seem to really be helping, and I felt like a zombie.
Yeah.
And that's something that is a big problem with antidepressants as well, because they tend to just shut you off.
Yeah. And like one of the symptoms of antidepressants is depression. It's like, why am I going to take this to make me feel better if it's going to make me feel worse? Like that
Exactly.
was one of the other problems I had with the Neurontin was like as he increased the dose, like it would make me nauseous, so I couldn't take it at night. I had to take it in the morning, or I couldn't take it in the morning because I had to eat breakfast, so I'd have to take it at night, even though you're not supposed to take it on an empty stomach. So it was just a whole nightmare around that. But then it would also make me tired, so like I'm gonna take this and then I'm gonna be asleep for like 10 hours, even though I have school in the morning. But this is the medication you put me on, and every time I go there and I say it's not working, you give me more. So this is just getting worse and worse, and that's another reason why it's like
Yeah.
I need to.
And like with medications, there are a lot of like natural medications and things like natural options. And for my anxiety, I actually take CBD oil for that, and it's I've been doing that for a month or two now. And like if I feel my anxiety's being it's in a higher level than usual, and
Mm-hmm.
I less manageable, then I'll take a little extra. But I take some every morning, and it's just half of a dropper, and it's only 300 milligrams, and it's completely refined. There's no THC or anything like that.
Yeah, disclaimer: it does not get you high. This is an entirely different substance.
It does not. It's purely medical use, and the kind that I have now, there are lots of different types and ways that it's been refined and like levels of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind that I have now is specifically for anxiety, but I haven't been like unable to manage my depression for like it's been manageable for a while, and especially since I got out of high school, it's been my mental health has improved exponentially.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that contributes most to that anxiety, depression kind of thing is high school is stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And teenagers are awful a lot of the time. And as much as grown-ups like to tell you, you can't get along with everybody, and some people just are jerks, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you do have to do your best to just avoid them and move on. But sometimes, especially if you feel like you're all alone and it's just you and like the entire world's against you, then that can be really hard. So I
It's
know, I mean, I wasn't even in school. Like I was homeschooled, but then I had, so in junior year when I'm still trying to fit all this school into 1 year so I can graduate, I was taking math online, and I had this teacher who, I mean, I was in an online class by myself because it was self-paced. So we were supposed to meet weekly to go over things, but he lives in Mountain Time and I'm in Eastern Time. So anytime he wanted to have class, it would be like 9 or 10 o'clock after dance. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing math in the middle of the night after, like, my brain is not going to work. So
yeah,
I never had class. And anytime I came to him with a problem I'd had, he'd just be like, he not in these words, but the gist of it was basically, "You're dumb, read it again, you'll figure it out." It's like, well, that's not helping me at all. So while I'm busy being depressed, this is not the kind of thing I need to be going on in my life.
yeah,
So there was that stress, and then at that point, I had like 2 years of school to try to catch up on in like the last 5 months, and I was just like, this isn't really productive, and there's no way I'm going to finish school before 2021.
yeah.
I think I might need to just test out. And I did. That was an interesting discussion to have with my Christian Southern parents. Um, so at that point, my mom was like completely on my side. I'd been to the whole hospital thing. Clearly, there's something wrong with me, and I have issues, and I deserve to be listened to because this is a serious thing. But I think it took my dad a little longer to come around because he was entirely well intentioned, but the Christian misconception that everything can be prayed away.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like, even before I went to the hospital, I was like, we're gonna pray all the time, and if you just pray and everything will be okay, it'll work out. You don't need medication because you should be able to do this on your own. Be fine. You've got God. Everything will be okay. And I love God. He's great. He's important. I do need him, but I also need medication.
Yeah,
Like we said, it's the chemicals. I can't fix that.
yeah,
Um. So, but then I think it was also a part of, I've always felt, and like me and my siblings have always felt this. Like there's been a kind of huge pressure on us ever since we were little. It's like we have to be great at everything because everyone in the church likes our family, and our family is like my mom's super smart. She's got 3 degrees, and she almost had a PhD, but then she had my sister, so school didn't finish. And then my dad, he's like a super high-profile software developer. He works for the government. So, like, they're great. We should be great too. It's like nothing less than A's. Everything has to be awesome. So I think a lot of that came from my dad has a GED. So I think he had decided, like, my kids are going to be better than me. They're never going to get GEDs. All of them are going to graduate from school. So I get to the point where I'm like, at this point, there's like literally no productive reason for me to stay in 11th grade doing all this 9th grade schoolwork. It would be so like, I could have passed the GED in 8th grade. So like, just let me take the test and then I can move on with my life. I can get a job and then I can start paying for my own dance classes. It's like, no, you're going to finish. There's no point in being a quitter. It's like, I'm not finishing. It's like, I'm going to be stuck in 9th grade for the rest of my life. So that took a couple months, but eventually he did come around. So I got my GED in October of last year. I've been out of school. I've just been focusing on myself and figuring out my mental health things while also putting more effort to dance, job searching. I finally have a job, thank goodness. So, and I have my license finally, because that was another thing. Like, I couldn't drive for a while because I was either manic or depressed. And when I was depressed, like when I first got my permit, I think was pretty close to my lowest point. It's like, when I'm depressed, I don't care what happens to the car. Like, I was still learning how to drive, so my dad's in the car with me, and I'd just be like running over all kinds of things, and he'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "Oops, whatever."
Yeah.
But like, so don't let depressed or manic people behind the wheel, because bad things will happen. But yeah, it took a while for my parents to trust me enough to let me drive again. But I think I've been okay for long enough that like they're okay with me driving by myself now. Thank goodness, because I have a job that they don't want to drive me to. But so yeah, all the good things that have come out of, and it's a hard conversation to have, especially when you have parents like mine. But sometimes it really is just not worth the struggle that it's going to be to go through the whole mess that would have been trying to finish 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in a year and a half just to say I have a high school diploma. When honestly, colleges are more accepting of GEDs than homeschool high school diplomas anyway.
When I finished high school through an alternative high school, I found out 3 months before I was like on track to graduate from this public high school here. It was called Ridgeline. That I wasn't going to graduate because my credits from online school didn't transfer. So I was like 9 or so credits behind. And if I transferred to this alternative high school, then they required 3 less credits or so than the public high school. So I transferred and I ended up, they were like, there's not really any classes like to do, like you could do packets and make up work. And I asked to do testing, and I spent less than an entire full school day, like cumulatively at that school, testing before I was graduated. It was like 4 total hours, and had my diploma.
Yeah.
High school doesn't work for everyone. Not every traditional school thing works for everyone. And I know that's like a very easy thing to say, and like, school is not great for everyone, whatever. It's not the same, but it's really not. And like, there are a lot of different things and a lot of different ways that people learn, and traditionally it just doesn't work.
Yeah, because I know I'm also, like, I'm not going to a traditional 4-year college. That was another thing that it took my dad a while to wrap his head around. I was like, no, you're going to college because people who don't go to college don't get good jobs. And it's like, I'm going to be a dancer. So the jobs I'm going to have are going to be things like waitressing, which is things people who don't have degrees get anyway. So, but then also I was like, I know that, like, with the mental health issues, because there's the chance that something could happen when I'm depressed, I either do horribly in school or I just can't make myself do the work. Like, that was trying to catch up all this work while I was depressed. I was not intaking information, and the stuff I did take in, I was like, I couldn't get up the energy to do school or whatever. So like nothing was happening, and why continue in this nothing when I could just be done?
Yeah.
And I'd rather have the time during the day that I would have spent doing nothing to get a job and be able to focus on dance, because that's ultimately the thing that matters most to me, not the number that my GPA is on my diploma, which is 3.45. Like, I have a good GPA that I got on my GED, but it's better than it would have been if I'd finished high school, because 100% I was getting a D in science and math, and that wouldn't have been good. And strangely enough, actually on the GED, I scored high enough to have college credit in science, which is my worst subject. So
you're definitely smart enough. It's just the work that is a problem. And that was something that I struggled with, because I always did really good on tests and things like that, but I did terrible in classes and like with work. And even if I knew the thing, I put it off because I didn't think I knew it, but then I could do it correctly on a test. And so like you being intelligent enough was never the problem. And like that's something that's hard to recognize also, was because it was just your mental health was so poor that like there's a thing like struggling with schoolwork and homework and things like that, but you still learned and you still complete the subjects. And so that's something that's also important to recognize, is like that you did do all of this and you did, like your GPA was so high, and like the 3.45 is like hard. It's a very important, like very big thing to have reached that. My the first trimester of my junior year, I'd always had like really low GPAs because of schoolwork, and even if I did okay on tests, I still failed classes. And my sophomore year, I ended the year with like a 0 point something GPA. It's terrible. And my first trimester of my junior year, I got a 3.6 because medications and therapy, and I started to grow up more also, and I changed friend groups. The way that I changed friend groups was not the best. Sort of like they all kicked me out of the group, so I was alone for a while. But I took classes that I liked, that I was interested in, that I was very like involved in. And even I went to football games alone. Like I wanted to have that experience even if no one did that with me. And that was something that was important for my mental health also, was like you can be your own best friend to a point. You can push yourself and you can do things, and it just takes a little bit extra sometimes and a little bit of aid.
The best, awesomest you is inside there somewhere. It just might take a little experimentation and trial and error to figure it out. But they exist. They exist. It might not feel that way, especially when you're at rock bottom, but there is a version of you that is awesome and so talented and destined for such great things. You just have to put in the work, which I know sounds awful, especially when you're depressed. But that's why it's important to surround yourself with those good people who will help you to do that work, because you did it by yourself, but it's awful to do it by yourself. And if possible, you shouldn't have to do it by yourself. It is important to have that internal sense of, I am strong enough to get through this, which a lot of times, like, it feels so stupid to just say things like that, but telling yourself that is such an important step, because eventually, if you keep hammering and hammering away at that mental block inside of you, you can get it to calm down. It'll take a minute, and it'll be a painful process, probably, but you can get through it.
And the only tattoo that I have going along with being strong enough, I have the word enough tattooed on my rib in just small cursive, and it's just a reminder. And like, you are strong enough. I am strong enough. I am enough as myself. And you are enough as who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the only tattoo that I have, and it's the only one that I plan to get for a while. But
It's a good one. It's a good one.
very important thing.
Yeah.
To remember also.